Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It is CFL Week 17. Ian Cameron, and now you see him on screen, Will Arndt, back in the house, ready to talk CFL Week 17. But before we get into, it tells you how loaded a show it is. We're not even going to ask Will how he is, but he's doing fine. He's in Texas, if you want to know. Everything's good. We got to jump right in because we got to spend some time on this show, Tom, about the big announcement this week, the CFL rule changes from Commissioner Stuart Johnston. That were rolled out earlier in the week. And I'm telling you what, when they made this announcement, the league, that there was going to be a major announcement about the impact on rules in the game and changes with the CFL or big changes moving forward, everyone started to lose their minds in speculation. I was hearing we're going to 4 downs. This is going to happen. They're trying U.S. expansion. I even heard that again. They're trying U.S. expansion again, the CFL. There's some kind of merger with the UFL was going to happen, because that's been rumored in the past. There was just wild shit being speculated all over the place among CFL fans, pundits, media people, you name it. But all it ended up being was, a few rule changes that, in my opinion, are actually more good than bad to try to make this game better. That's honestly the way I feel about it. Now, just as far as the reaction to these rule changes across the CFL, it kind of looks like there's this Canadian player versus American player civil war starting to maybe unfold here in the CFL the last few days based on reactions. I can't help but notice that two of the most vocal people that are hating these changes, hating these rule changes, totally against it. One person in particular, one Nathan Rourke, calling them garbage. He didn't like them. He was outspoken about it. Mike O'Shea, head coach of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, said these changes, when he heard about them and saw them, made him sick to his stomach. That was the quote. So, and it just so happens to be that Mike O'Shea and Nathan Rourke are both born and raised Canadians. That's, and so they're these tried and true emotions of, this is our game. It's fine the way it is. It's been this way for 30, 40 years plus and even longer. We don't need any cosmetic changes to it. And then you got the contrary opinion to it from the likes of two American-born starting quarterbacks in the league, like Davis Alexander, my buddy, in Montreal, and of course, Bo Levi Mitchell here in Hamilton, both saying they love the changes, and it's going to make this game better. They're both American, of course. So, like I said, it's kind of that, it just seems that a lot more of the people against it might be those Canadian-born quarterbacks and running backs and players and coaches, and more of the American, players and coaches kind of like these changes. Well, I'm here to tell you I'm fucking Canadian, all right? And I like these changes. I like a lot of them. The benches on the opposing sides, I like it. It was long overdue. It's ridiculous they were both on the same side. One team would have to have a long substitution, during the game, which to me is kind of a unfair advantage for the other team. That was an obvious change. I don't mind the goalposts being moved to the back of the end zone at all, because I thought it was a bit ridiculous looking that they'd be right at the front of the end zone. You'd see quarterbacks throw the ball and it would hit now, it wouldn't happen often, but it would happen enough that it would piss you off. It pissed me off. I'm seeing here's a nice wide open receiver, and the defender known as the goalpost stops that pass from being completed. That pissed me off. And plus, you never know. It could risk injury with it being there. Someone's trying to run a route and whoops, they take maybe they lose their footing and slam right into I've seen it happen before. So I like the idea of moving it back, and it's kind of a package deal, Will, with the goalpost moving back to the back of the end zone and the field shrinking from 110 to 100 yards. You kind of have to have both. You can't have one or the other. If you're going to put the goalpost back there, you got to condense the field to 100 yards, 50 on each side, the way it is south of the border in NFL and college football. I don't mind that. The modified rouge makes sense. It was ridiculous to win games on a missed field goal or a punt out of the back of the end zone. 1 point wins the game. It happened with that Toronto-Saskatchewan game last year. Rewarding failure, if you will. So I like that the rouge is still in existence. If you take a knee, if you concede a single point, or if you don't return it out of the end zone, then it is still a single and a rouge exists, but they eliminated it for the cases it should be eliminated. And that's a missed field goal and a punt out of the back of the end zone. Anytime that happens now, no rouge, no single point will be awarded. The one I like the most, Will, is the 35-second play clock. I like that. I really like that. And I had to educate a few of my buddies and other CFL fans because some of them were saying, oh, wait a minute now. You're moving the play clock from 20 seconds to 35 seconds. Isn't that going to slow things down? And yeah, when you look at it that way, you may think that, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The 20-second play clock after the previous play never started until the ref blew the whistle and wound in the 20-second play clock to start. And I have seen so many instances during games where sometimes the referee blows the whistle to wind the 20-second play clock. Sometimes it's 20 seconds after the last play, but sometimes it's 30 seconds after the last play. Sometimes it's 45 seconds after the last play. Someone who is currently the radio voice of Winnipeg, the Blue Bombers, Derek Taylor, documented an example, Will, from the BC Calgary game last week, where there was a play run from the line of scrimmage at 8:50 left in the quarter in the BC Calgary game. The next play, the next snap of the football did not occur until 7:42 left in the quarter. So that is 1 minute and 8 seconds between plays in one instance last week, Will, in that BC Calgary game in a system with a 20-second play clock. That's absurd. I mean, that's totally ridiculous if you ask me. 1 minute and 1 minute and 8 seconds between plays on what is supposed to be a 20-second play clock. And the reason for that is when the ref initiates the play clock to start at 20 seconds and counting, he's got to do it only after he sets the yard markers, lines the ball up where it should be, does all the counting of all the players on the field to make sure there's not too many men or legal substitution or any of that stuff going on. And only after all of that process checks out and occurs does the referee blow the whistle to start the 20-second play clock. And there was never any consistency with it, never any uniformity with it. Some refs would take their sweet-ass time to wind that play clock, 50 seconds, after the last play, 40 seconds after the last play. It's a guessing game. It's like fucking injury time in soccer. I don't know when they're going to blow that damn whistle to end a soccer match. I think that's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, that we're relying on a referee looking at his whistle, or at his watch, I should say, to determine when the match ends, rather than a clock that tells everybody clearly, how much time's left in the match. Same thing with this. You never knew when that 20-second play clock was starting. It all depended on when the ref got his process done with all that shit I mentioned, moving the ball to the proper yard line, setting the yard markers, counting up all the players on the field. Only after then did he want, and some referees were quick doing that, and some took their sweet time doing it and were slow as can be doing that. And as a result, you had this inconsistency, 40 seconds between plays, 30 seconds, 1 minute and 8 seconds between plays. The 35-second play clock, which will automatically start after the last play, it will go into effect next year. That'll eliminate that. It'll be consistent. It'll be 35 seconds or just a little bit less, depending on when the team snaps the ball. Every single play, in between plays, you'll be looking at 25 to 35 second duration in between plays. There'll be consistency. It'll be close to similar amount of time between plays now moving forward. So I love that rule change, Will, with the play clock. And then one last thing I'll say on that one before I hand it to you. The one thing they need to look at with the play clock, the one little flaw in it, is the last 3 minutes of the game. That's because of the fact that now, if a team's protecting a lead, there's 1:30 left on the clock. Well, they're going to be able to go NFL style, take a knee 3 times and run out the clock, game over. So you're going to maybe have some issues with those crazy, epic, frantic finishes and comebacks that you would see in the last minute of a CFL game, now with the 35-second auto play clock in effect.
Wasn't that excluded for them the last 3 minutes?
No, it is still 35 for the last 3 minutes. But Stuart Johnston, the commissioner, and this is where I'm hopeful, Stuart Johnston, the commissioner, and the committee, the competition committee that he talks to, they're going to look at ideas and concepts to still allow for those great finishes. And I don't know if they're going to go in this direction, but here's my solution to it, which I think makes sense. You establish for each team in the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, hell, you could even do this in the last 3 minutes of the first half as well, a bank of timeouts in addition to the timeouts they already get for the standard portion of the game prior to the 3 minutes. left in each half. A bank of timeouts that can only be used by each team in the last 3 minutes of the game. Now, you can make it 1 extra timeout, 2 timeouts, 3 timeouts. I would say something in the 1 to 3 timeouts range for each team. They're only allowed to use them in the last 3 minutes. I would probably go with 2. I think 1 might be too few. 3 might be too many. I think 2 timeouts is good. To strategically have 2 timeouts at your disposal to use them in the last 3 minutes of the game. And obviously, it would be beneficial to have those timeouts for the team trailing, obviously, in the last 3 minutes of the game. That way, when the clock gets inside a minute and a half left in the game, you're not going to run into automatically a situation team's got no timeouts left. And all of a sudden, team leading with less than 90 seconds left or less than that, can just take a knee, game over. And we don't get that thrilling last 10 seconds, 20 seconds where team's driving down the field and is able to make that comeback. Putting a bank of timeouts in play, 1 or 2 extra timeouts for usage only in the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter, I think is a way to work around the 35-second auto clock being in there for the last 3 minutes and preserving those great finishes we love in the CFL. So what do you think about the rule changes, Will? The floor is yours.
There's a lot there. And gosh, for the viewers, man, we should make this guy the commish over here. He's just got great ideas, and I see it very much the same way as a player, and I've highlighted
I like that idea with the extra bank of timeouts that are only for the last 3 minutes.
Yeah.
You like that idea? Huh?
Yeah, no, I think you got to protect that because that's, well, there's a lot here, right? So I remember when I first got into the CFL and I was being educated on the game as an American, whatever, to about 10 years ago now. And I remember Mark Trestman saying how there was 2 games. There was the first whatever, and then the last 3 minutes. And they were 2 separate entities, but they were so important in the CFL, that last block of time. And as we know and have come to love, that is uniquely Canadian or unique to the CFL. So absolutely want to protect that. If they are going to keep the 35 seconds as it is, I do think that needs to be addressed. Now, in regards to the big picture, change is inevitable. Growth is optional. Even the big dog, the NFL, they adopted the XFL's rule change on the kickoff, and they didn't hesitate to do so like that. So to say that we can't change something is to say that our product is perfect. And I don't think anyone here would say that the product is perfect, right? So it's awesome, but can it be enhanced? Sure. And so I credit the commissioner for doing something and not just leaving things as it is, because that's not what he's being paid to do. And at the end of the day, the outrage and the interest and it being talked about is a net positive for the league. I'm with you. I know it seemed, at least on social media, to be contrarian, to be in favor of the rule changes, but it's not like the brand of football is like the NFL. It's still very different. The 3 yards, the field width, the 15-yard end zones, the motion, like there's plenty to be distinct from the NFL.
The main pillars of what makes the Canadian Football League brand of game different are still in place. Yes,
100%.
Totally agree.
Yep. And from a quarterback's perspective, for whatever it's worth to the viewers, that goalpost, yes, it's something you just get used to, or I guess you get used to it, but you deal with.
But let's be honest, it's Will, someone that played in the CFL for years. When he probably first came to the CFL and for the first time in a CFL stadium saw the goalpost right at the front of the fucking end zone, he's probably thinking, "What the fuck? What the hell is this shit? What is this? This is stupid."
I've missed touchdowns because of that. I remember one time, go back to 2021, my last playing experience in the CFL. I was Mike Riley was out, and I was taking reps with the ones. And I had a post down the middle during a red zone period, and I go to throw it to Brian Burnham. He's wide open. I remember I like short arm the finish because I felt the post there, and I was like, if I threw it normal, I was going to hit it. And just like you said, excuse my French, but it's bullshit. Like why do we want to be contending with that? I know you could get over it, but do we have to deal with it? So taking the 50 yards or the 55 yards and making it 50, and then the end zone still being 15 yards, I freaking love it. If they had pushed it to 10, you have every right to be pissed. But to be able to still have the full end zone or a bigger end zone and run routes and have the plays be dynamic, that's one of my biggest flaws or my criticisms with the NFL is like, you're playing rugby inside of the 5-yard lines. That's not the case with this format. So I'm with you on the changes. And then you know what? Like, I'd rather try something and find out than just be dug in on how things are because, it's just the way it has been. The product is still going to be unique. And I think you hit on a lot of the points that I agree with, but I'm for it. I mean, I think, innovation and change and growth are all things that are, really at the heart of what's going on here. And yeah, a lot of the Americans like it because I guess it moves it closer to what they're used to, but the game is still very unique and distinct.
Yes.
So I'm with you on that.
The changes move it a little bit more to a lot of the things that constitute American football, NFL, and college. But the sanctity of Canadian football still exists. 3 downs, wide fields. They're not shrinking the length of the field, and they had to. Stuart Johnston said it regarding the size of the end zone, 20 to 15 feet. The Montreal end zone is not a proper end zone length.
Yeah.
It's cut off. It looks like a diamond shape,
Yep.
because the corners are all fucked. In the end zones in Percival Molson Stadium there. You know that. When you play in Ottawa, you played in there, Montreal so many times. It's now uniformity and consistency. Every end zone in every CFL stadium is now going to be the same length. And it wasn't that way before. It's the way it should be.
Yeah. And then the last thing I was going to say is I remember one of the biggest obstacles American players would have with the CFL game was the play clock. Yeah, the ref, when they blow it in, is inconsistent and all that stuff. But the first thing I'll say is if teams want to play fast, they can play fast. They can snap the ball as quickly as they want to. So nothing changes in that regard. It's not like it's going to permanently slow down gameplay.
You're just not going to have the vast differences and gaps in duration of time between plays anymore, which is the best thing about it.
Yeah. And think about it like this, compared to the NFL, which has a similar play clock now. In the CFL game, you got to get the call in the same way. You huddle guys up. You got to spread them down. They got to motion from farther away. The receivers have to run farther away down the sideline to get on the field. I remember times where we would be snapping the ball, and the receivers, when they break the huddle, where they would run onto the line of scrimmage and they would run down the line just in case we had a play clock issue, just so we could get it off. So like there is more to do. So I'm for it. Let's have a better brand of football if that allows us to collect to have better plays and better execution and better communication from OC to quarterback and coordinators. I think that's net good. And if you want to go fast, go fast.
Absolutely. There's still no deterring the ability to pick up pace and tempo and play up tempo offensively. No question. And I think now with that's going to encourage, I think, more people to do that. Now, I don't know if I totally buy the commissioner's, data study that says this is going to lead to 60 more touchdowns a year. That's pretty. That's a high bar to set. That you think these changes are going to result in 60 more touchdowns a year. So I'm interested to see how close it comes, next year and beyond to seeing that.
Excited to find out, though.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it gives us all something to look for and talk. And hey, you know what? If it's wrong, then you can always go back, I suppose.
100% true. No question. So I think when you look at this particular situation here for the rule changes, I like the majority of them. I really do. I mean, I think it's without bastardizing the Canadian game. Like I said, that's when I'm out. That's when I put up the stop sign and say, you know what? I'm protesting, or I've got real issues. I'm writing a letter or email no one writes letters anymore, but email to complain to the league about what they're doing if this ever goes to 4 downs. That's where I draw the line. Can't be 4-down football.
Yep.
You've got to keep it 3 downs. You got to keep the wider fields, I like, because it really tests the quarterback's ability with arm strength wise. We know how difficult it is to throw those out routes to the wide side of the field. You lose that if you're going to go to the NFL regulated size of the field. So I like that being in the Canadian game. You really find out who can fucking throw that pigskin.
That's right.
Here in the CFL. Yeah. That's what I like about the wider fields that maybe you're not going to get as much when you see the NFL and the CFL. So like I said, I still like a majority of these changes that went into effect. And I'm excited to see how it plays out. I really like the 35-second play clock. That's the one I like the most because I think it's going to lead to more plays. Now they've got to address the 3 minutes left, how they're going to handle that. But, other than that, still the modifying of the rouge was good. And like I said, moving the goalposts, shortening the end zones, everything. I'm okay with everything because the foundation elements of the Canadian Football League and the Canadian style of football are still in play, in my opinion. And I know we had Nathan Rourke sounding off about his displeasure. I think if he just lets it simmer for a few days, really dives into the minutia of the changes, and really, really looks into it with an open mind, I think he's going to realize, maybe he's still not going to like them, but I think he'll realize, hey, there's potential for these changes to be for the good of this league. That's what I'm hoping for anyway.
Yep. Hey, I mean, listen, the precedent is set. So, yep. I mean, let's do our best to embrace whatever, the leadership does and give it a chance, because that's all we can do.
There's one thing I forgot to mention, and I want to before we get into the games this week, and that is with the goalpost being at the back of the end zone. And obviously a lot of people's displeasure with that and sadness with that is the missed field goal kick return is going to be gone. And yes, it will be gone for the field goals that are missed wide right or wide left, where, because if it goes wide right or wide left, that means it's reaching the goalposts, and the goalposts are at the back of the end zone. So when they go wide right or when the kick goes wide right or wide left, it goes outside the back of the end zone and it'll be a dead ball, play over. That's it. And the other team will just get the ball. But you are still going to have, I think, some instances where, especially a guy like Mike O'Shea, who doesn't mind trying for a long distance field goal, you could still see some instances where there's some field goal attempts that are short. They don't reach the goalpost at the back of the end zone, and the football lands in the end zone because it's short on the field goal try. Well, in those instances, you could still have the opportunity for a missed field goal or a short field goal return for a touchdown. You could still see that. So it's not gone entirely. Short field goals that don't reach the distance of the goalposts, there's still going to be some opportunities for kick returns off missed field goals. It's just the ones that go wide left and wide right, because if they do, it'll just be dead ball.
Yeah, and I don't know how innovative the CFL wants to be, but who's to say that there can't be a field goal contraption that comes forward, 2 or 3 yards in that bar, which is 10 feet up. It's not going to be obstructing any really passes at that point, where you might have an opportunity to have a couple more kicks returned because of the field goal bar being ultimately 2 or 3 yards into the end zone.
Yeah, that's not a bad suggestion. Like I say, there's always ideas you can come up with. And like I said, I just found it funny that said, someone for a meme or an image of a casket with the missed field goal return, missed field goal kick returns in. I'm like, well, yes, the wide left or wide right, it'll be dead ball. You'll never see kick returns off that anymore. But the short field goal, don't forget about that's what I warn people. Don't forget about the short field goals, though. The ones that fall short of the goalposts, those will land in the end zone. Those will be eligible for someone to return them back the other way. So you still will get some, but it'll only be, of course, on those short field goal attempts that don't get far enough to reach the goalposts. All right, there you have it. That's our spiel on the rule changes. It's time to talk some games and break down some games for the upcoming week. We will begin with Friday night football tonight. First of the doubleheader on Friday night. Calgary and Montreal. Montreal 4-point home favorites, 50.5 the total in this game. Davis Alexander is back, and not a moment too soon for these Montreal Alouettes. Practiced in full, has been announced as a starter for this game against Calgary. Still undefeated as a CFL starting quarterback entering this game. Remember, the game he last started was Week 7 against Toronto. He started the first few games. They won every game. Then he missed a few, came back in Week 7 against Toronto, and that's when he re-aggravated his injury on the touchdown run that won the game for Montreal, and they ended up beating Toronto that night. And, of course, he's missed every game since then. But now he's back, first game in 10 weeks. Week 7 is the last time we saw Davis Alexander on the field. And he's an upgrade from McLeod Bethel-Thompson, even bigger upgrade from James Morgan and any quarterback that Montreal's got on their roster. They've won 2 in a row, even without Davis Alexander. They somehow managed to escape against Toronto, even though McLeod Bethel-Thompson was terrible. Typical McLeod Bethel-Thompson, by the way. He was horrible last week against Toronto, and they're lucky as shit. They found a way to pull out that game. Defense played good, and Jarrett Dagey didn't play well for Toronto. But they were fortunate to pull that one out. And then he had a horrible, terrible horseshit game last week following probably the best game I've ever seen him play in ages against Saskatchewan the week before, when he's going up and down the field on the road against that great Riders defense and scoring all kinds of points. That's MBT in a nutshell right there. He could go from one of the best games you'll see him play to one of the worst. And that's exactly what happened for him with Montreal the last 2 weeks. So it's a big upgrade. We know they've gotten healthier, both sides of the football. And here's Calgary after that, the story of the CFL, Will, early in the year, but don't look now, 2 losses in a row. Scuffling, stumbling a little bit. Defense has been chewed up the last few games. Edmonton runs the ball down their throat and puts 31 on the board the game after the Labor Day game. And then, of course, off the bye against BC, that was borderline embarrassing for the Stamps defense. Nathan Rourke and BC scored on almost every possession, in that football game, putting over 50 points on the board against that Calgary defense. So Stampeder defense not playing like it did early in the year. And it looks like Vernon Adams, this is like a breaking news update. We only found this out an hour ago. We know PJ Walker's out indefinitely due to injury for Calgary. We also knew Vernon Adams was very iffy for this game because he left the BC game due to injury last week. And Calgary signed 2 quarterbacks this week. Josh Love, who's played spring football the last few years, and also Logan Bonner, who used to be here in Calgary and actually started a few games for them in that dismal season last year. He didn't play well, but he started a couple of games for them. So people were starting to think maybe Josh Love or Logan Bonner are going to have to be the starting quarterback Friday night here for Calgary. But it does now look like Vernon Adams is going to be good to go. He was back in practice at full today, and it looks like VA will be back and play for Calgary in this game. So a VA Davis-Alexander quarterback matchup looks very tantalizing. That being said, you look at VA the last 2 games, it hasn't been the same VA, Will. He struggled against Edmonton in the game before their bye where they scored only 19 points. Even the 28-7 Labor Day win, he had fewer than 200 passing yards. So there's something going on with VA. He has not been as good the last 3 games. And then last week was an abomination. Before he got injured, he had 2 interceptions. He's missing throws left and right. It looked like he was just so fired up to maybe stick it to BC and Nathan Rourke and show I'm the guy you should have kept. And it's almost like he got in his own head last week against BC because he was just making mistakes and bad throws and bad decisions and interceptions, forcing shit that wasn't there, stuff that you haven't seen from him really all season. So I'm worried about the decline in VA's level of performance the last few weeks. And so early in the week, I took Montreal. It was a split between the money line and -3. Now that VA is likely to play, I don't know if I'd be rushing to take -4, but I would take Montreal still before Calgary. Calgary's finally hit the wall a bit, slumping a little bit, back down to earth. Maybe VA's not 100% either. You do have to factor that in a little bit. Maybe that's impacted his play the last few weeks, but I'll be damned if I'm betting against an undefeated quarterback only laying 3.5, 4 points, and that's Davis-Alexander. Hasn't lost a game as a starting quarterback in the CFL, and right now Montreal's starting to trend up, and to be honest, Calgary's kind of trended the other way the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, I'm on Montreal. I'm just trying to decide right now, Will, with already being on the money line and -3 with Montreal, if I want to maybe middle it a little bit and take a small chunk of Calgary now at +4. I'm still mulling that over, but I certainly like the way this is setting up for Montreal with by far their best quarterback returning for them here in this game. Will, what do you think? Stamps, Alouettes.
Big game for playoff implications. Things are pretty tight on both sides. And, Calgary sitting at 8-5, Montreal at 7-7 with a chance for both of them to either make a play at that top seed in their division or slide into the rest of the mix. So big game. And, the trend is your friend here. I really like Montreal. Some of my sources have led me to believe that I like Montreal in this spot here, even giving 4 points. So, Davis-Alexander.
They beat Calgary in Calgary earlier this year with MBT at quarterback. Remember that?
Yep. I like Montreal. I'm looking at their injury report here. Nothing too concerning. A lot of noise going on in Calgary at quarterback and some health issues and losing 2 in a row. Montreal at home, getting their guy back. I like Montreal in this spot.
Toronto, BC, we've got BC 10-point home favorites, 56.5 the total. Maybe beware Toronto defense that Nathan Rourke was as pissed and as angry as he was earlier this week about the CFL rule changes. He might take out all that venom and anger and frustration on Toronto's defense this week, and he's playing at a level that he can probably do that right now. Unbelievable right now, Nathan Rourke. I can't say enough. Like, now maybe Calgary's regressing and coming back down to earth a little bit after the incredible start and the turnaround season they've had after a terrible year last year, but still shouldn't take anything away from Nathan Rourke in this BC offense, because he has been playing with total confidence, totally in control, finding his receivers, making great throws, making good decisions, very few, if any, turnovers. And all of a sudden, we're seeing all these receivers step up. It has been something to behold. And BC entering this game is in possession, I would say, of two of the best betting streaks in the CFL right now. BC has gone over their team total in 9 straight games. They are looking to make it 10 in a row that BC has gone over their posted team total. And they are 8-0 BC to the over just the regular game total. The game total in BC Lions games has gone over in 8 straight games. And BC's gone over their team total in 9 straight games. These are two of the best streaks going on right now in the CFL. So what did I mention last week in that BC Calgary game? I had BC Calgary over as best bet. By the way, shout out to Will with Edmonton plus the points as his best bet against my Hamilton Tiger Cats. They didn't win, but they covered the number. Yep. Perfect result for me, as I was on Edmonton too. Perfect result. Hamilton wins. I'm a happy fan. Edmonton cashes. I'm a happy bettor. Those are the best games, man, when I can cheer on the Ticat victory and still bet on the other team and make some money. There you go. That's beautiful right there. And it worked out perfectly there. Yeah, I'm running it back here. BC team total over 33.5. It's gone over their team total in 9 straight games. Not all of them have gone 34 or more points, but most of these games that have gone over their team total for BC they've scored 34 or more points. And I think they can do that here against this Toronto defense at home. It's also a revenge spot for BC because they went to Toronto and Nick Arbuckle and the Argos just lit up that BC defense, and they won 52-34 in that game at BMO Field. And Nick Arbuckle looks like he's going to play here. Remember, he did not play last week. He was injured. Jared Dagey started, struggled, but Nick Arbuckle's been practicing the last couple days, so I would expect him to be under center here and return at quarterback for the Argos. So, this could be one of these games where you take both teams over their team total. Toronto's team total is only 22.5. If Arbuckle plays, they can probably score 23 points or more in this game. BC's defense was better last week against Calgary, but when you get that big lead, Will, and you can just tee off with the pass rush and you don't have to fear the run game at all, it makes it a lot easier to play defense, does it not? And I think you saw that from BC last week. If they're in a closer game here, then we'll see if this BC defense is really back on the beam, because obviously they've struggled for the majority of the season in recent weeks. So this is one of these games where I would probably look at both team totals over. Obviously, I'm going to keep riding BC team total over until it loses. And I'm also going to be on over 56.5 in this game. Obviously, there'll be no weather issues at BC Place Stadium. Not only 8 straight BC games have gone over the total, but majority of the recent Toronto BC head-to-head games have been overs as well. So that's what I'm looking at. I like BC team total over. I think I'll take a chunk of Toronto's team total over 22.5 as well. The BC team total over at 33.5. And I like over 56.5 in this game. Will, what do you think? Toronto, BC?
Yeah, I think we see it pretty similar. These are the two teams and two defenses in the CFL that have let up the most points. So
and don't lay the 10. If you like BC like I do to score points, just take the team total. Don't trust that defense to cover laying 10 points. I wouldn't do that. It wouldn't shock me if Toronto covers actually plus 10 here in this game. And we get something like, 38-31 BC. That wouldn't shock me in this game.
Yep, I'm with you. And Nick's tough guy. I think based on what I'm seeing here, he's going to go. And, we've talked for weeks about how surprisingly productive and explosive they've been on offense. And there's no reason to believe that Nathan Rourke in this spot at home in the Dome versus this Toronto defense is not going to have some production on offense. Yeah, we know about his success, but how about this? BC Lions, it was 198 yards rushing last week and 5 touchdowns. So They're rolling, and I expect that to continue. I like the overs here as well, just maybe not the 10-point spread.
Yeah, they didn't have James Butler, their primary running back last week, BC, and there they are. Instead, you know what? They did short passing game, became the run game, and Nathan Rourke used his legs quite a bit, a lot more than normal to make up for the lack of James Butler at running back, and the offense didn't lose a beat, that's for sure, without James Butler. It was just quite the tour de force by Nathan Rourke against Calgary. Talked about how VA would be fired up for that game, to show that, hey, BC kept the wrong quarterback. I think Nathan Rourke almost played with that same mindset, like, hey, I got to show people BC made the right decision, making me the starting quarterback and choosing me over Vernon Adams, and boy, did he ever play awesome.
Yeah, he did. I'm only bringing it up because it was being talked about, but that was my MOP pick at the beginning of the year, and he's right there in the mix to get it done.
He's got as good a chance as anybody to win that award. There's no doubt. All right, Winnipeg, Hamilton, as we transition to Saturday, the two games on Saturday. We got Hamilton. Sorry, this is backwards. Winnipeg's the home team, and Hamilton is the road team. But yes, Winnipeg is a 1.5-point home favorite at Princess Auto Stadium. The total 51.5 here in this game. This is a rematch of just 2 weeks ago, as we know. They just played in Hamilton a couple weeks ago, and it was a Ticat victory, 32-21 over the Bombers in Hamilton. Of course, that was facing Chris Streveler at quarterback that night, and I was there, and we talked about this last week, that he was awful throwing the football. I mean, accuracy, decision-making, and then you flip it over to last week for Winnipeg, where they won the game, and you think, okay, Chris Streveler figured it out. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. You would think, don't be fooled by that final score. You're going to see somehow, some way, Winnipeg beating Ottawa 26-18, and you're going to think 26 points in a win? Progression for Chris Streveler. Wrong. 3 for 8, 54 passing yards for the entire fucking football game, and they won. It's one of the most ridiculous box. You'll get a headache, a migraine looking at that box score, thinking, how the hell did Winnipeg win this football game? 26-18 over Ottawa last week, with 54 passing yards for the entire game from your starting quarterback, Chris Streveler. Hard to fathom that ended up in a Winnipeg Blue Bombers win on the road. And I had to throw some shade at one of your former teams, Ottawa. But that's an Ottawa loss if I've ever seen it. That's an Ottawa Red Blacks. How the hell do you lose that game result if I've ever seen one from them? And it just shows you just the brutal state of the franchise right now and where they're at. It's just remarkable they lost that game, quite honestly. Now, Drew Brown is not devoid of blame. He threw the ball phenomenal, 406 passing yards, but he did have 2 interceptions. That was concerning. I mean, they had 2 different 100-yard receivers in that game last week. Did this Winnipeg or Ottawa team, and they got off to that great start. But boy, oh boy, just mistakes and penalties and turnovers, special teams issues. It was the whole gamut, really, for this Ottawa team. Sloppy football. And, unfortunately, Bob Dice and the coaching staff have to answer for that. Sloppy stuff, mistakes, and that's how you turn a game you were infinitely better on the box score in the stat sheet, and you turn it into a loss. That's how it happens. So is that a sign that Winnipeg is back on the beam? I'm not sure, but it certainly will help Winnipeg that Zach Collaros looks like he's going to be returning and starting at quarterback here for the Bombers at home against the Ticats. And with that in mind, I'd probably look at Winnipeg or nothing. Revenge situation. They obviously have a strong home field. I personally can't remember the last time Hamilton won in Winnipeg. It's been a decent amount of time since that happened. I think we're something like 1-7, 1-8 in our last 9 visits to Winnipeg. So it's been a tough place for us to win over the years. So I think the Bombers here around a pick 'em, I think might be the right side here to find a way to win this game. Now Ticats are playing well. They're finding ways. We've seen it. Obviously the win they had against Montreal, albeit with James Morgan. But they were able to win that game. They beat Winnipeg at home with Streveler, again, backup quarterback. Don't want to make too much of it. But they did finally face a team with their number 1 quarterback last week, Cody Fajardo, and they still won that game 29-27 with the walk-off field goal. That being said, they didn't cover, laying 5.5. And the defense, when they have to face, the best that the other team's offense can provide, the best that the other team can provide at the quarterback spot, there's still some issues I have with the Hamilton defense. Because, they shut down Strevler and Morgan the 2 weeks before that, but they still gave up 27. And Edmonton's offense did move the ball last week. They gave up 35 to Nick Arbuckle in a loss on Labor Day, 29 to Trevor Harris in Saskatchewan, 41 to Nathan Rourke in BC. You get my point. Against the number one quarterbacks and best that the other team's offense can throw at them, there's still some issues with the Ticat defense. So I think I like Winnipeg here in this spot. I hope I'm wrong as a fan, but as a bettor, I'd be looking at the Bombers here at home near a pick'em. What do you think here, Will? Hamilton, Winnipeg.
Yeah. It's weird to be going against Hamilton, but I just think there's something with how many Winnipeg's at home. It's a revenge spot for them. They're getting their quarterback back. The team the last 2 weeks has had to play with a handicap or a handbrake on, and they've learned how to have production in close games and even win despite, really any passing game at quarterback, on the road. And I think there's value in that as a team and learning how to win and, being able to lean on different sides of the ball. So, it's weird, but I like Winnipeg in this spot. Hamilton, very respectable, but I think this is just a spot here where I think Winnipeg is going to put it all together at home. And Zach Calero is coming off of a head injury, so I don't think it's going to be anything that's, physically, preventing him from going out there and having a great performance.
Yeah, from all indications, he looks fine in practice. They don't have any concerns about lingering head trauma or anything like that following this latest injury he's had. So you got to take Mike O'Shea and the coaching staff at their word for that. I probably would lean over a little bit in this game too, just because we got 53 points with Winnipeg at Hamilton just 2 weeks ago, and that was with Strevler under center. I think Winnipeg's passing game will certainly have a little bit more explosiveness and production to it. Well, it's not like you have a high bar to beat with 54 yards last week through the air for Winnipeg, but like I said, certainly feels like Winnipeg's offense is in better position for success here the second time around against Hamilton. All right, our last game for CFL Week 17, also on Saturday, Saskatchewan, Edmonton. Saskatchewan, 3.5-point road favorites, 54.5 the total. This one's interesting because I've been almost backing Edmonton every week for the last several weeks with Cody Fajardo at quarterback. They're 8-1 against the spread in 9 games since he took over at quarterback. The only non-cover was when they got blown out on Labor Day, 28-7 by Calgary. Every other game, they've either won or they've lost by 4 points or less. They've basically been in every other game. So it's not easy, especially when they're catching points, to go against Edmonton right now. But I really worry about them in this spot. Here's why. 2 crushing losses, soul-crushing, soul-sucking in a row losses for this Edmonton Elks team. Walk-off field goal, loss against Toronto, a game you had no business losing. You were the better team. You lost at the end. Turnovers and just that disappointing. And of all people, Jarrett Dagey drives down the field and puts Toronto in position for that last-second Hiralahu field goal to beat Edmonton. And then last week against Hamilton, that was definitely a coin flip game, back and forth. Hamilton wasn't leaps and bounds better than Edmonton and vice versa, but still a winnable game. You've got the lead. And here's Hamilton again, just like Toronto the week before, driving down the field, putting themselves in position for a Mark Leggio game-winning field goal. He nails it, and that's 2 weeks in a row on the road. Edmonton loses crushing games back-to-back to Toronto and Hamilton on last-second walk-off field goals, both of them. Now you're coming back home. I worry about the psyche. I worry about the confidence level. You're now slipping further and further out of chance and opportunity to make the playoffs. They still can, but they've got some serious work to do. I worry about where their mentality is, though. After losses like that, Will, it's not easy. Some of these teams, if you can remember, coming off some of these painful losses, especially when you have 2 of them like that, at the end, last play of the game, and you're on the losing end of both of them in back-to-back weeks, that's not easy to pick yourself up off the mat, and get ready to go again for the next week. And you counter that with what Saskatchewan's got coming into this game. They're off a bye week. Corey Mace has got all this extra time to prepare. Before the bye week, we know what happened. They got ambushed by, of all people, and sliced and diced by, of all people, McLeod, Bethel, Thompson. and the Montreal Alouettes went up and down the field. Saskatchewan's defense looked as bad as they've looked all year.
Yep.
And they were out of the game in the first half. I know they kind of made it interesting. Scoreboard was definitely it was more lopsided game than the final score would indicate, Montreal, Saskatchewan, but a horrible game. And all the quotes are, hey, it's a learning experience. We're better than that. We used the bye week to, get ourselves ready and rested. And now we're coming out. We know we got to put a better performance on the board. This feels like a great Saskatchewan spot. And I'm going to go against the Elks, a team that's been very good to me from a betting standpoint, but I'm going against them this week, and I'm taking Saskatchewan here, -3.5 in this game. They've won and covered 5 straight at Commonwealth Stadium against Edmonton as well. They've played very well here, the Riders, over the years against the Elks. So I like Saskatchewan here as a short road favorite. I would lean over as well, just because, look, after that slew of unders, this was an under machine for like 7 or 8 games in a row, the Edmonton Elks, until all of a sudden the last couple weeks where they gave up 29-plus points to both Toronto and Hamilton. And both of those games, it was 61 and 56 points in those games, both of them high scoring. And the over's 4-1 in the last 5 meetings between these two teams. So I do like the over a little bit, but I like Saskatchewan even more than that. I think they are the right side. They're off a bye, off a loss. They've done well in Edmonton against the Elks over the years. I think majority of their wins have been by margin too. I'm not just talking Saskatchewan coming here and winning by 3. A lot of these games they've won by 6, by 7, some of them by double digits. Like, they played very well here in Edmonton. So I like Trevor Harris and the Riders here to bounce back off the bye and off that, obviously, as bad a loss as they've had all year against Montreal at home. Before that bye, I think they play a lot better here. Will, what do you think, Saskatchewan, Edmonton?
Yeah, 3.5 points ain't that much for the stark difference of the first place team and the last place team, if you kind of look at it like that. Edmonton's been better. They've been more competitive since Cody Fajardo's been in. But, you lose a couple of those heartbreaking games in a row. They've been in every game, but that only works for so long. After a while, you just become kind of numb. You don't get dejected by these losses because, unfortunately, I was a part of teams that were like this in my time playing and coaching. And you just kind of become numb to it. So it's not like something you use or rally around after a while. And Saskatchewan's going to be motivated. They're going to be healthy. They are ultimately 10-3. They're 5-2 in the division. Edmonton has won probably, I'm not exaggerating, 4 or 5 home games in the last 4 or 5 years. And I see my face up over back. All right. And 3.5 points ain't that much to be laying in a place that's not all that hard to play, in a place that Saskatchewan has played well and has every reason to go in there and do some good work. And they're simply just a better football team. So don't overthink this one, folks.
Yeah, Sam Emilus, I think, is back, too, for Saskatchewan. And he's obviously had problems staying healthy all season, but it looks like they will have Samuel Emilus back at receiver. He's practicing in full. Sean Bain. Now, they were hoping to have Tevin Campbell, one of their better D-backs, secondary players, back, but it looks like he might miss this game still. But they are getting healthier at receiver, which is good to see. And, Kean Schaefer-Baker, forgotten man. Like, we haven't seen Kean Schaefer-Baker play in a long time.
Saw that,
But it's starting to look like he is going to be able to go here for this team as well. So that's good news, getting healthier in offense. They do still have some injuries on defense, which speaks to maybe that this can go over. Not just Campbell in the secondary, but Nelson Lacombo in the secondary. Shane Ray along the defensive line hasn't played or practiced yet this week. So those are concerning injuries. So, and meanwhile, they're getting almost back to full strength as far as receivers are concerned. Schaefer-Baker's back, Sean Bain, Sam Emilus, and that's to go with the other guys that have stepped up, like Keyshawn Johnson and Myers and Robustelli and Neild and all those other guys that have stepped up for Saskatchewan. So, Saskatchewan and over for me in that game. All right, there you have it. That's our CFL Week 17 preview. Lots of CFL rule change discussion and analysis right at the beginning of the show. So that was fun to really talk about and dissect all the rule changes. It's time to wrap it up with best bets, and we're going to see if we can deliver another 2-0 sweep from me and Will, like last week. For me, it was BC Calgary over. For Will, it was Edmonton plus the points. 2-0 best bet sweep on the Frenzy last week. See if we've got an encore in mind here this week for Week 17. Will, where are you going for your best bet?
And real quick before I do give my best bet, and Ian, is the Team total on the Hamilton at Winnipeg, 51.5.
The full game total is, yes, 51.5 in that.
Hammer it. That game's going over. Winnipeg's going to be rolling on offense. Bo Levi's been hot. That offense has always looked good all year. The defenses on, well, at least on Hamilton's side of the ball, has led up 30 points in, I think, 5 of the last 7 occasions. And, I just really like the over in this spot. I think both offenses are going to do some good work, and 51.5 is a pretty respectable, beatable line or total.
All right, there you go. Hamilton, Winnipeg, over 51.5 for Will Arndt with his best bet for this CFL Week 17 slate. My best bet, I'm just going to take Toronto BC over 56.5. We cashed with BC full game over last week. I like BC team total over as well a lot. But now that Arbuckle's in, I think the Argos are chipping into that scoreboard production as well here on Friday night in this game. So high scoring again with the Argos and Lions. Let's go with Toronto BC over 56.5 for my best bet here for CFL Week 17. I would have given you either Montreal or Saskatchewan, one of those sides that I really like as well, but the numbers climbed a little bit with both. So, but I still like those sides, like the Winnipeg side as well, and I agree with Will's over in the Bombers and Ticats as well. Great stuff, great show as always. Will, anything you want to say before we wrap it up?
No, I will leave you guys with the thing that I said in the beginning about the rule changes. I think it's just a good reminder for us in life that change is inevitable. Growth is optional.
There you go. Always the great philosophical little anecdote right at the end of the show from Will. Just a little sage advice for the listening and viewing audience, which is always well received and welcomed, to give us a little life guidance from Will Arndt here at the end of the show. Great stuff. Shout out to everyone for tuning in. As always, thanks for the support. Hit the like button on the way out. For Will Arndt, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Enjoy Week 17 in the CFL, and good luck. And we'll be back next week for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.